Hey everyone, it's Stella Grizont, and today we're going to be talking about mental load. Mental load, also known as mother load, also known as emotional labor. Now, why am I talking about this? Because one, I've really been struggling with it myself, and I find whenever I talk about what I'm struggling with, a lot of other people resonate. So I thought that's the case. Also, there's a lot of articles being written now about how women are carrying the mental load at home since kids have been homeschooling, since we're all eating our meals at home, since there's been lockdown. So this is especially relevant to parents of children, couples who are both working. If you are a single parent, God bless you, you are just doing it all. And this is relevant whether you have a same-sex marriage or a heterosexual marriage, but I will because I'm referencing my own experience, be speaking about men and women. And also, unfortunately, the research is mostly based on heterosexual couples. So let's talk about what mental load really is. Mental load is the remembering of all the things, planning of all the things, and making sure all those things happen in the household for the family. It is the project management of the home life, right? So at our workplace, we actually have project managers, or that at least is a responsibility of someone's job description, right? However, in the home place, this kind of is invisible and it happens by default. And unfortunately, it tends to fall mostly on to women. Even in the case where there are stay-at-home dads, women still end up taking care of most of the housework, even if they are working. So let's talk about some examples of mental load. So one example of mental load is, let's say my daughter gets invited to a birthday party. My husband and I both get the invitation, but I have to reply. I mean, if I don't, then it's not going to happen, right? I am also the one who puts it on our family calendar. I am also the one who will think to buy the gifts. I am also the one who will wrap the gifts and will make sure that my daughter signs the card to her friend. And I'm the one who will remind my husband that this is also a commitment we've made and it's on your calendar, by the way. So that's an example of mental load. Now, do men have mental load? Of course they do. And this has been a real point of contention, because when I would raise this with my husband, talking about my mental load and how I was so exhausted, he didn't understand, because he said, well, I carry a lot of mental load too, like thinking about the gutters, making sure internet is running, thinking about what car we're leasing, right? And that's true. I don't think anything about those things. But the problem area for most couples is around the everyday consistent tasks that are necessary to keep the family running. And so we still haven't gotten out of the kind of more traditional roles, and women still take on most of the laundry, most of the cleaning up around the house, most of the cooking. And while men are taking on more and more, there's still a lot of mental load left on women. So even if my husband does take my daughter to the birthday party and I don't, I've essentially set him up and given him met all his needs in order for him to just go and take her to the party. And so this carrying of mental load can lead to burnout, because it is a big energy drain. So let's just talk about what leads to burnout. One of the most popular models for explaining burnout, and I think one of the most simple, is called the job demands resource model. job demands resource model. And basically it states the more job demands you have compared to the job resources, you're at risk for burnout. Job demands are anything that drain your energy. So when there's conflict at work, when there's unmanageable workload, when your roles and responsibilities are not clear, those things drain you, right? And then in terms of resources, there's things like having great relationships at work, getting recognition and feeling appreciated, having a sense of meaning. Those all give you energy. And so the goal for all of us in our work and home life is to feel more resourced than we have demands, right? And so we can have a lot of demands. We just need to make sure we have more resources. And now in my household, part of my resource team was having someone who could help clean the house, having my daughter signed up for pre-K and then an after-school program. All of those are gone. So now for us, all the mental load is bubbling back up. And that is a privilege, and I'm aware that I'm very privileged to be able to have an after-school program that I used to be able to give my daughter to, and now we don't. And that we could afford to have someone clean our house, and now we're not doing that because of COVID. So let's talk about, well, I want to go back to when I would have this conversation with my husband about mental load. He wasn't quite getting it. And it would actually make me feel kind of crazy because I know that he does so much around the house. He's a total feminist. He supports me in my business. So I would start to question myself and why I was feeling so tired and exhausted. Like, is there something wrong with me? And only recently did this concept of mental load emerge and give me finally language, something to that didn't make me feel so crazy. So if you've been feeling crazy, like you don't know why you're so tired all the time, think about all the things maybe that you're doing by default. You might not realize that, that's work, right? That is, if you were doing the equivalent at a job, you would be paid for that, right? So the problem is that mental load is invisible and often by default falls on women for the everyday kind of stuff. So one of the other insights that my husband and I, that really helped change the conversation for us is by acknowledging that just because I've been carrying the mental load, it doesn't mean that my husband is not thoughtful and doesn't do a lot. And that was a big breakthrough because he will swoop in and take care of a lot of things. And I consider those favors. They are lovely in the moment, a lovely surprise. Oh, you're going to do the grocery shopping this week? Amazing. That's great. But unless you decide you're always going to do the grocery shopping, it still is my mental load. I'm still expecting to do the grocery shopping. It's just a nice favor that you happen to be doing it this week. Now, since COVID, I have to give props to my husband. He's the one who's doing all the grocery shopping. So I'm very grateful for that. So if you've tried to have this conversation with your partner, and again, maybe you're the guy and you're carrying most of the mental load. But if you've had a conversation with your partner and there's resistance, they don't want to have the conversation, they don't understand what you're saying, they have all these reasons why that's not true, you might want to acknowledge how much your partner does do and how you are grateful for it. Because by raising this topic, it can create a lot of shame. It can bring up a lot of shame. It feels really uncomfortable. And also, there are a lot of things that I'm sure your partner is doing. And sometimes if you're just talking about all the mental load, you're not acknowledging what they're doing. So it's really important to say, hey, thank you. I know you totally own this, and I'm so grateful I don't have to think about it. And I know that last week you did the grocery shopping, and that was really awesome. One thing that I would like us to talk about is how can we divide and conquer, or how can we own something so that I don't have to think about it, because that's really where I get ease, is not having to think about it, not having to remember it. And so I would really love to discuss how we can just pick a lane. And you're going to have to probably start small because there's so much to review. I mean, you can get really nitty gritty, like who's responsible for taking out the bathroom trash? Who's responsible for dusting everything or this part of the house? So I would start very small. And the place you probably want to start first is, where are you doing all the reminding? Reminders breed resentment. So here's what I found. My husband one thing that we actually did do very well when my daughter was about like 2.5, 3, is we decided my husband would handle bedtime and I would handle cleanup. And that was a huge win-win for both of us, because I'd get to clean up, watch a show while cleaning up, and my husband loved putting her to bed, and he could do it faster than I could because my daughter would just, it just was harder for me to do it. So, but what I would notice is that every night at about 7:30, I would be reminding my husband, hey, it's time to do the cleanup. It's time to do bedtime. And then I would be reminding him every 5-10 minutes, her bedtime is at 8. And I mean, this was just within the last year that I said, why do I have to remind you about bedtime? It's almost as if you have no sense of what time it is. Every night you forget it's your responsibility. Why am I like constantly doing this? So even though we both picked our lanes, I was still getting involved. And so one of the things that's really important is, if you do pick your lanes as a couple, you have to stay out of it and even potentially let them fail or see how they do it differently, right? So, and maybe they're not going to do it in, like, maybe Lenore ends up going to bed a little bit later. Honestly, when I put her to bed, sometimes it's later too. So when you pick your lane, you have to step out, right? You have to really maintain that boundary. So for example, if your partner is going to be doing the cooking, maybe you don't really love the meal that they cooked, I would say, thank you so much for cooking this meal. If you want to give them some constructive feedback, be very delicate, but let them decide what's for dinner if they're in charge of meal planning and cooking, right? All right, what else did I want you guys to know? Because this is such a big topic, and honestly, I have done this video, I don't know how many times, because it's such a loaded topic, no pun intended. And I don't know that I could go on and on. So here's what I'd like to leave you with. If you are feeling the mental burden, it's real. And you want to think about having the conversation with your partner. You don't want to do it out of anger, because it's just not going to land. Trust me, I've done that. And as you know, when I teach how to master difficult conversations, your energy is everything. And so you have to come from a loving place. You really do have to come from a loving, curious, open place. So when you're pissed off, it's not the time. When you're exhausted, it's not the time. So when you can find in it yourself, more or less calm, you want to approach your partner and say, hey, here's what mental load is. I think this may be happening for me. I'm feeling a little exhausted. I would really appreciate if we could talk, like reassess how we divide up some of the tasks. And I want us to talk about what it means for us to own those tasks. And again, you want to acknowledge all that your partner does, all that they own already, so that they know you're not telling them that they're not thoughtful and not a help. Maybe that's what you're feeling in the moment, but you want to acknowledge that they do a lot of stuff, and then try to just pick one area and then experiment with that for a month and see how it goes. And then pick maybe in a few weeks, say, can we meet in a few weeks, evaluate, and maybe tackle another area, right? So that's my advice, you guys. Or that's actually just what we've been learning and navigating. So I want to hear from you. Are you the one who carries the mental load, or does your partner? What's worked for you around sharing some of that burden? And do you want to hear more about this? And if so, what would you like me to address, or any topic really? Whew. With that, you guys, I wish you well and send you much love. And if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, because it's all about helping you work happier and live better. And we will talk next week. Bye.